Now, I'm going to do just a little theory lesson for you and see if this explanation helps at all with your understanding. Okay, so this section here on scales and keys. Well, scales and keys in music are the building blocks of all written music. Just like in mathematics, learning multiplication tables is considered maybe a basis for learning maths, or in English, learning correct spelling, punctuation, etc. Is helpful with English. So with music, scales and keys are the building blocks of a lot of written music. So why do we learn scales? Well, we learn scales and keys because it helps us with reading music. It helps us to understand when we need to use sharps and flats in the music. Scales particularly, and arpeggios as well, are quite often used in music that we play. We might play a little bit of a scale here and there, or a bit of an arpeggio here and there. And all musicians learn scales and arpeggios. So pianists, flautists, violinists, they all do. Okay. The thing with the piano is that we're quite lucky. We've got a visual aid. We've got the keyboard. And we can actually see how the scale is set out. If you play a violin or a flute or something like that, you can't see it in the same way. So having a piano is quite an advantage to have this visual aid in front of us. So the first part of the section in this theory exercise is talking about semitones, and it's really showing us how the 8 notes of a scale are constructed, and they're all constructed exactly the same way, whether you play C major or whether you play a complicated scale like F sharp major, which has got lots of sharps in it. They are constructed exactly the same way. Okay, and it's a mixture of tones and semitones. So what are tones and semitones? Well, a semitone, write it up here, is the smallest interval in music, all right? It's the 2 closest adjacent notes that you can play or sing or whatever, okay? Now on a piano, we can see where they are because a semitone goes from any white to black key or black key to white key. So they are all steps of a semitone. They are the 2 closest music notes you can have on the piano or in music. There are 2 other places where we have a semitone, here and here, between 2 white notes on the piano because there's no black key, all right? But it's still the same music interval. Now a tone is just 2 semitones. So if I go from that white note to that black note and that black note to that white note, in other words, if I go from white to white there with the black in between, I've actually moved a step of a tone or 2 semitones. Okay, so a major scale, which is what we're dealing with here, not minor scales, major scales at the moment, is built on your 8 notes, your octave, C to C, in this case, if we do C major. And it's made up of a tone, because you go from C to D, another tone between D and E, then a semitone between E and F. Then we go up another tone, another tone, another tone, and then finally a semitone between B and C. So that's your 8 notes of your C major scale, made up of a tone, a tone, a semitone, a tone, a tone, a tone, and a semitone. And because it's constructed like that, I didn't actually need to hit any of these black keys. So that's why C major has no black keys, or theoretically speaking, in music terms, we shouldn't say that because we shouldn't refer to it as a keyboard. We should say it has no sharps or flats in it. Okay, so the question that they're asking you is only dealing with the semitones in the major scale. They're not interested in the tones, all right? They just want you to identify whether 2 semitones occur. So if we count the degrees of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, between 1, 2, 3 and 4 notes of the scale, there is a semitone. And if I counted along, it would be 7 to 8. The last 2 notes of the major scale have got a semitone. So quite often in the exercises, they will ask you to put a bracket between notes 3 and 4 and notes 7 and 8. So in your exercise here, it's a little bit faint, but you've got, this is C major because it starts on C, and it ends on C, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the 8 notes. Okay, so if I count along, 1, 2, we've just noticed or found that 3 to 4 is a semitone, so you put a bracket there. That's 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 also has a semitone, so that you put the bracket there. So if we deal with this next one, which they tell us is G major, now there's another clue that we know it's G major because it starts on G and it ends on a G. Okay, so whatever the name of the key or the scale, the first note and the 8th note should be matching the name of the scale. Okay, so again there are 8 notes here. If we count along, 1, 2, 3 to 4 is a semitone. 5, 6, 7 to 8 is a semitone, so you put the brackets in. Let's do this one. Now this one is F major. Be careful to always notice the clef because otherwise you might misread the letter name of the note here. So in the bass clef, that note is F and that note is F as well. Now of course scales go up and they also go down. This one is going down, okay? So we have to be careful to notice that because of that, we are counting backwards. So we're counting 8, 7, 6, 5 and so on. So, but the semitones still come in the same place. So either you can work backwards or you can work upwards. It's up to you. 1, 2, 3 and 4 is a semitone. 5, 6, 7 and 8 is a semitone. So still the construction of the scales, in other words, the order of the tones between the notes or the semitones still come in exactly the same places, whatever the scale is you're playing. Okay. Now, why is it then that these other scales, G major, F major, D major, have got sometimes a sharp, maybe 2 sharps, maybe a flat? So why is that? Well, it again goes back to this order of the tones and the semitones, which is always going to be the same. So if we now deal with D major, so if we start here on D, up to the 8th note on D, what did we have to start with? We had to start with a tone and then another tone. So let's work that out. So D to E is a tone. E to F would be a semitone, but we need another tone there. So therefore, that's got to go up 1, 2 semitones to make a tone. So that's why in D major you play D, E, and then you go straight to F sharp. So hence, there's a sharp there. Then, between notes 3 and 4, we have a semitone, so that's why we then go to the G. So let's count the notes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you've still got the same order of tones and semitones. We start with a tone, and then another tone, then a semitone. Then we have another tone, and another tone. So again, it's not that note, because that would be a semitone. It's the next black key, so it's C sharp. So that's why you've got F sharp and C sharp in your D major scale. And then the last 2 notes, the 7 to 8 notes, 7 to 8, is a semitone, and that works out correctly. So you see, I've used the same order of tones and semitones as I used for C major, but it has made me have to use 2 of the black notes, or in theory terms, again, we shouldn't say black notes, we should say they are sharps. Okay, they are F sharp and C sharp. Okay, now you could say, well, why is that F sharp and not G flat? Because F sharp and G flat are the same piano key. F sharp, or it could be G flat as well. Well, which note did I have to go up from? I had to go up from the F to the F sharp, so it's not going to be G flat. Because G, we need to play G, so we don't really want to alter the G note at all. The note we want to alter is the F, because that's the one we're not going to use. We're not going to use that white note F. We're going to use F sharp instead. We're going to bypass that one. Okay, so that's how I know that's F sharp, and that's how I know that's C sharp, because we don't want to alter the D and make that a D flat, because then how do we get to D if we've called it D flat? We've taken D away. So the one we want to take away is the C, because that's again the one that we're bypassing to get to that black key there. So that will be the C sharp, and that's what it will be called. So if we look at the scale here it is, D major. Again, the first note and the 8th note should be D. At the moment, there are not any sharps written in this, and I think the question asks you to put accidentals. So accidentals refer to sharps, flats, naturals. They are all accidentals in music. So at the moment, it's not a D major scale because it's just showing all white keys, if you like, or no sharps and no flats, which is not correct because it hasn't followed the pattern of tone, semitone, and so on. So we need to put in the F sharp and we need to put in the C sharp. So we need to go along to D, E. That's where we need to put the sharp, and you put the sharp before the note there. G, A, B, and the C is C sharp, so we need to put the sharp there as well. Okay, so then I can put in that that is a tone, that is a tone. There's my semitone between the F sharp and the G. That's your semitone, which is notes 3 to 4, so that's correct. Then it goes up a tone, a tone, a tone, and 7 to 8 is the semitone, the C sharp to the D, so that's correct as well. So that now will play out as a D major scale. But as hopefully you're beginning to see that it's constructed in the same way because of these tones and semitones. So C major, it means you don't need to use any sharps or flats. It works out nicely with the tones and the semitones without having to use them. But any other note that you start on will have to include one or more accidentals, either flats or sharps. Okay, so let's try the F major. We didn't finish that one. So although it is a descending scale, that might make it a little bit more confusing. I'm going to start from the bottom going upwards because that's easier. And I'm going to use my keyboard again. So in F major, we start on F, sorry, there it is, and we need to finish on F as well. So let's work out our tones and semitones. So we go a tone, F to G, that's fine. Another tone, G to A. Now we're going from 3 to 4 now, and this should be a semitone. So therefore, that's where the B flat comes from. It's not A sharp because we have to play A. We can't eliminate A. So it's going to have to be B flat because we're actually then going to go a tone, which will take me from that black key to that white key. 1, 2 semitones makes the tone. So this B white key, if you like, we are eliminating. So that's why that's fine to be a B flat, because we've eliminated B to make it B flat instead. So B flat should go on the 4th note. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. So we put the flat before the note. Make sure the sign has the line going through it. If the note's on the line should go through the sign. If the note is on a space, the space should go through the sign. Should be in line with it. So where do we get to? Start again with F. Tone, tone, semitone. Tone, 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 and semitone to finish. And that is a semitone anyway, between E and F. And that's where we put our other bracket there. Okay, so F major only has the one accidental, and it is a flat this time. It's a B flat. Let's do the next one, F major again. I don't know why they've done the same one twice, really. They're in different clefs, but it's the same scale, so I can't quite see the advantage of doing that. So again, if we read from the bottom upwards, we go from F to G, G to A to B flat, because that has to be a semitone. So I need to put the flat in there, all right? Then we go from B flat to C, which is a tone, C to D, D to E, and then lastly E to F is the last semitone, okay? And then we've got G major here in the bass clef, Check that G and G are the first note and the last note. There should be. You've got your 8 notes here, okay? So we need to go up a tone between G and A. That's a tone between G and A. A tone between A and B. That's a tone, that's fine. Now the next one, we need a semitone, which it already is between B and C. So I'll put the bracket in to show where that semitone is, and it's fine as it is, don't need to alter anything. We go another tone between C and D, that's fine. Another tone between D and E, that's fine. Another tone between E and it'll have to be F sharp, because E to F is a semitone, so that's no good. There, all right, we need to alter that because we should be going up a tone at that point. So the F becomes F sharp instead. So we bypass the F and go straight from E to F sharp. So now I need to put my sharp on the F, okay? And then the last 7 to 8 note is the semitone, F sharp to G, which it works out, it is a semitone, okay? So I'm hoping this will start to make sense. Now, in theory, they often will ask you either to add the accidentals, so they put the accidentals in front of any notes that need them. So we've worked through each scale looking to see whether we need to put any sharps or flats in front of any of the notes, and we found where they needed them and we've added them in, and we've also put the semitones where they occur always in the same places. The other thing that you get in music is key signatures, this word here, okay? Now, when you follow a piece of music, you will often get the key signature written at the beginning of the music, and you have to remember it, of course, all the way through, which is quite often the difficulty with learning music, all right? They don't write in the sharps or the flats every time you need to use it. I mean, if you had, I mentioned earlier, a difficult key like F sharp major, it's got 5 sharps, 6 sharps, 5 sharps, 6 sharps, I can't remember, 6 sharps, I think. That would be a lot of sharps to write in the music. The music would be littered with sharp signs, and it would be horrible to try and read it. It's much easier, really, to have the key signature written, all the sharps written at the beginning, and you take note of them, and you just know that those notes that you play have got to be sharp, so you just remember that. And it does take time to get used to being able to do that. So with key signatures, they match whatever sharps or flats you've got in these same keys, okay? So in G major, let's find our G major, there was only one sharp, the F sharp, okay? So the key signature should only have an F sharp, and that identifies that as G major, okay? Now the sharp or flat is always written in the same places so that you can recognise them easily. The sharp in the right hand, sorry, the treble clef, is always written on the top line. The top line is F on that stave, so that's where the sharp goes. In the bass clef, the F is the second line on the stave, so that's where the sharp goes there. And it's always written on the same line in the treble and the same line in the bass. So you recognise it quickly, oh, it's F sharp, and it's G major. F major had B flat in it. We found we needed to put a flat on the B. So the B flat in the bass clef is written on the second line of the stave, and in the treble clef it's written on the middle line, because that is the B line, okay? So that belongs to F major. D major had 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So here is, this should say D major, because it belongs to the scale or the key of D major. We need to use the F sharp and the C sharp. So the F sharp again is always written on the same line, so you can see it and recognise it. It's always written first as well. The C sharp is written second, and it's written on the 3rd space in the treble. In the bass, the F sharp is written on the second line, just as it was there, and the C sharp is written on the second space. They do follow the similar patterns, so they're sort of staggered. The F sharp's written higher, the C sharp's written a bit lower. And you do get to recognise them. If they were always written differently, you wouldn't recognise them as easily, so that's why it's consistent to keep them the same. So you put D major there, so that's actually right. F major's right. If there's no sharp or flat, the only scale that applies to is C major. Your F major was right there as well. So you weren't doing too badly there. You seem to be a little bit on the right track. Okay, and let's go on to the next one. So what do we have here? They're just saying where the key signature is written. It's written after the clef but before the time signature. It's always that order. Add the clef, treble or bass, and the key signature to make the scales what it says they should be. So you could refer, if you've got these keys right, to these key signatures here if you weren't sure where to write them. So we've got F major. So the first note, as we pointed out on the first page, must be F, and the last note must be F. So the only clef that will make those both an F is the treble. So you put the treble clef. F major, what do we need to make it an F major scale? Let's go back to page 1. In F major, we needed the B flat to make it an F major scale. And there's the key signature with the B flat in it. We want the treble clef, and it's written on the third line of the stave. So you've got that a little bit wrong there. So you needed to put your flat there, okay? So the name of the flat and the name of the scale don't match at all, okay? They don't tell you anything, I'm afraid. It's all about knowing your scales, and all of these scales you've learnt as part of your piano, because the theory goes alongside the graded music exams. They tend to use the keys that you will have covered in your playing so that you can hopefully relate it back. So if you know your scales and you know the different sharps or flats that you need in each one, hopefully then you will know which flat is needed for F major. And it doesn't look as if it's on the line, but it should be on the line. We needed a B flat, okay? C major, of course, has no sharps or flats, so that's fine. And you've got the clef right, because that's C, and that's C in the bass clef, so that's right. You've got the treble clef right there, because D major, we needed to make sure that was D and that was D. So what do we need in D major to make it D major scale? We needed F sharp and C sharp. And as this one's treble, let's find that here. Here it is. So it's on the top line and the third space. Top line and third space. I'm not doing it terribly accurate because I'm sort of doing it sideways here. Then G major scale, that is G in the bass clef, so your clef is correct. That's G. What did we need in G major scale? We needed the F sharp. So what have we got here? Bass clef. There's the bass clef with just the F sharp. It's on the fourth line. So I write my sharp on the fourth line with a line going through the middle. Okay. The next one, write out these scales. So this time, you've got to find where the starting note needs to be. Okay, so if it's G major, now this is quite important. If it's descending, we're starting from the top of the scale and coming down. Let's use our keyboard. We're starting from the top and coming down. So on your stave here, you need to start with the G at the top here, all right? Because you need to bring your scale coming down the stave or down the scale. And the last G should be the octave below that. So it might be an idea to put your first note and your last note in. Now, You can do it either way. You can put the key signature, then the time signature in, and then write all the notes out. Yes, it does say add correct key signatures, because you must make sure, again, either you write the accidentals in the scale, like you did on that first exercise, or you put the key signatures in, just as you did on that previous one. So they do want us to add the key signature here. So G major, we had up here, has 1 sharp, has F sharp. In the treble clef, it's written on the top line. And then we put our time signature in. Then all you're doing is copying what they've written. Ooh, it's a bit untidy doing it like this. Using the same note values, being very careful not to skip a line or space. So this is not terribly neat doing it like this. Okay, now when we get to the middle line, my stems need to start coming up on my notes. And then put your double bar line in as well. All right, so we've got the 8 notes, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've got our F sharp, because it's G, F sharp, E, D, and so on. It goes a semitone, a tone, a tone, a tone, a semitone, a tone, and a tone. So we can check it using that method as well. F major, in the bass clef, we're going up the scale, ascending. So let's put our starting notes in. So I'm going to start at the bottom with my F, and my last note should be the F 1 octave higher, and that will have the stem going down that time. Okay, what do we need in F major? We need B flat. So this is bass clef. So bass clef B flat is written on the 2nd line. So I need to put my flat on that, which makes it the B flat. Then my time signature. Then I simply copy the 8 notes, being careful, as I say, not to skip a line or space, otherwise it'll make it a note out somewhere. Following the note values that they've asked you to use. And again, once you get to the middle line, the stem starts coming the opposite way. I'm trying to write mine under theirs, but not totally successfully, but that's what I would suggest you do. So let's check it out. Tone, yeah, F to G is a tone. Tone, G to A is a tone. A to B flat is the semitone, that's fine. B flat to C is a tone. C to D is a tone. D to E is a tone, and E to F is a semitone. So it's still constructed using those same building blocks, if you like. So it looks like a lollipop rather than a note. And then the last one, C major. No key signature for C major, so that's nice and easy. Put your time signature in. We are ascending the scale. So again, I'm going to start with a C here and make sure that I end up on the C an octave higher. I feel like I'm writing left-handed. It's very strange. Okay, slightly different time values this time, a little bit more complicated, but it's good practice to write quavers and things. Where we've got to C, D, E and F. Now, because those notes are above that middle line, that magic middle line, we start the stems coming down. G, A, dotted crotchet A, B is a quaver. Notice the direction of the little tail as well. So they do look a bit like lollipops rather than notes. The tail of a quaver always points to the right, all right, whether the stem's going up or down. Some people do get that wrong. So again, we should have the 8 notes, so we haven't skipped any notes anywhere. And we know it's the right order of tones and semitones, and it doesn't need any sharps or flats. Okay, so there's your completed exercise. So hopefully that makes some sense. We can go through it a bit more in the lesson next time if something doesn't quite make sense to you.